On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, a special Saturday episode of Locked On Thunder, our first episode of our NBA draft dash to the NBA draft, a podcast every single day until NBA draft day. Today, we're joined by another Thunder super fan, one of the biggest accounts on Thunder Twitter, Thunder Chats, to talk all about the NBA draft and kind of what the Thunder could do this offseason. All of that and more coming up on today's Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.
Are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, media member and editor-in-chief over at thunderousintentions.com, Rylan Styles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Styles. Follow the show on Twitter, LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we are joined by Thunder Chats, one of the biggest Thunder fan accounts on Twitter, to talk all about the NBA draft and the Thunder offseason as a whole. Chats, how are you doing today?
Hey man, I'm doing great. It's the weekend. Watching the finals, another great game. Playing basketball in the morning. I'm talking Thunder hoops right now. So hey, things are looking up.
Things are looking up, and you're deep in the draft on your podcast, Topic Thunder, talking to draft guests, just breaking down prospects on your own. Everyone is really draft centric right now in OKC. Let's start at the top, because I think that's the most boring conversation of all the draft conversation, because it's kind of narrowed down to like 4 names, and then you just kind of pick whoever you like. But at 2, let's just say that we can assign the Magic whoever we want to assign. For me, I've always said Walker Kessler as a joke because it's kind of funny. I don't think he has that much draft value. So Walker Kessler goes number 1. Everyone's on the board. Who do you want?
With me it's Chet. I've gone back and forth, talking to all the people that's come on our pods about the draft. Watching the tournament, watching throughout the year. I've had Jabari, Chet, and Paolo number 1 at some point in my board. But as we get closer to it becoming real, I just feel like Chet is the most pricey pick. What he can do offensively. He doesn't have a lot of holes in his game offensively in terms of, what he's able to do. He's not going to be asked to do anything at a super high level on the offensive end. He's definitely going to serve as more of a connector. But defensively, he instantly just steps in and fixes a lot of the problems we have. He gives you rim protection. He gives you versatility all the way out to the perimeter to a certain extent. And, I know there's a lot of people that are worried about his frame, and I get it. Let me just say he's not Poku, okay? They're tall, skinny white dudes. That's the only comparison you can say with Poku. But one of our guests that we had on, Tyler Rucker of No Ceilings, he said that a well-known scout told him, he messaged the scout and was, kind of voicing those same concerns about the frame. And the scout said, when you worry about the frame, that's when you get fired. So that's words of wisdom from a well-known scout that I can't dispel, but everybody knows him. So
yeah, and I think that too. You're talking to a scout, and they kind of take on the challenge of, sure, you need to add to his frame now, but that's kind of your job as a developmental staff, as a organization, to develop these guys physically, mentally, emotionally, everything in terms of developing them in the NBA landscape. So the deterrent should not be his frame right now. It should be how you project these guys to be 2, 3, 4 years down the line. And I call it Poku PTSD, the people that compare Chet to Poku, and they're just 2 totally different things in terms of basketball. But let's say that Chet is off the board with Orlando at 1. Let's say here in a couple of weeks, we start to hear smoke screens and start to hear more talk of Chet going 1 to Orlando. Is it simply just take Jabari or Paolo for you, or then you start to get creative if you're Sam Presti and go after Jaden Ivey?
Yeah, no, I would like to, give you a weird answer, but nah, I'm pretty boring at this point. I will say that my last board, I did have Paolo at number 2. I might be reconsidering that. I think that if Chet's off the board, I think Jabari just makes too much sense with what he does. The fit is just seamless. Offensively, defensively, there's a lot of questions about his shot creation, and the beauty of shot creation is when you have guards like Josh Giddey and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you don't have to worry about creating your own shot that much. There's going to be a lot of people that, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to get your own shot that you're not creating it. You got these guards creating it. And one of the biggest, pet peeves that bothered me about Jabari Smith's season is the guards that he played with, KD Johnson, Wendell Green. They were you could tell they were really hard to play with. And, if you give him Josh Giddey, Gilgeous-Alexander, instantly, I think things are going to open up for him offensively. Defensively, I'm really impressed. I saw throughout the year specifically, I'm a Kentucky fan, big shocker there. Whenever Kentucky went to Auburn, he was locking up anybody that you threw at him. He was putting on the whole show offensively. Elbow jumpers, three-point shot, even getting into the lane. I don't know. I feel like, the more time that we have, and I've talked about it with our, my co-host on the podcast, it's like a blessing that you have all this time to go through all this coverage between the lottery and the draft, but it's also a curse because you can talk yourself in and out of prospects, multiple times by the time the draft rolls around. But yeah, I would say I'm back in on Jabari at 2. I think his fit's just too seamless offensively, and then defensively, I think sky's the limit.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that it's kind of gotten to that point where people are trying to predict the Presti when in reality, it's not as though he's just a madman like he's made out to be. He's a very smart GM, very good GM, but it's not as though he's going to take a guy worse than what what you would think just because he can, right? So I think that the Jaden Ivey stuff is kind of spiraled out of control. It kind of, I think, loses its context the more it's told. I think that maybe the Thunder just said, hey, we like Jaden Ivey as a prospect, but that doesn't mean you're going to take him at 2, right? I'm sure last year Troy Weaver liked Evan Mobley, but he was going to take him over Cade Cunningham. I'm sure he liked Jalen Green. He was going to take him over Cade Cunningham. I think that's just a consequence of where the Thunder ended up in the lottery. Sure, they like Jaden Ivey, but they're in a position now to get somebody else. And for me, if I was betting, I would bet they walk away with one of the top 3 guys, regardless of who Orlando takes. For me, I have Jabari Smith as my number 1 overall prospect. I think that he's just excellent, especially in OKC with a couple of facilitators. I'm not ruling out Paolo. I'm not ruling out Chet. I think that if Chet's on the board, it'll be difficult to see OKC passing on Chet. For you with the Jaden Ivey smoke, what did you make of that for that 1 week or 2 week period that, it felt as though the Thunder were going to go with Jaden Ivey or trade down, and then there was that Kings report that they already made the trade, which was insane.
Yeah.
They made the trade a month before the draft. But what did you think of all that?
Yeah, no, I really just kind of took it all in stride, to be honest with you, just because, if there was a GM that was going to do something wacky at the top of the draft, it's probably Sam Presti. But at the same time, the fit is obviously in question, and, that was always going to be weird. And not even the fit of us having multiple guards and Ivy being a guard, but the fit of there being a noticeable hole at the big man position, and 3 guys that could reasonably fill into that spot. And so yeah, I never really bought into it. I always thought it was kind of smoke, and I'm one of the people that kind of subscribe to, at least early on in the process, that if we're hearing about it, if it's leaked, it's probably not going to happen, because if a deal, quote unquote, was on the table and agreed to, I think in the Paul George trade, I think even in the Russell Westbrook trade, Presti had said that, if this leaks out, it's done, the deal's dead. So that was kind of my justification for dismissing the trade entirely.
Yeah, and I think it just comes back to we're bored. No games or anything.
Yeah.
People are trying to think of scenarios that make sense or somewhat make sense. And again, losing context. This could have just been a scout from another team who said to this Kings beat writer, that the Thunder are impressed with what Jaden Ivey's doing. They're going to be impressed with at least 20-something prospects in this draft, but they might not be in position to draft any of them at all. They're going to be impressed with a lot of guys. If you're not impressed by multiple guys in a draft class, this is a very bad draft class in that case, right? So yeah, I think that with the Thunder, whenever you're looking at the Thunder rumors, people forget that also with sourced info, they don't just like us whenever they tell us stuff, right? Scouts, players, agents, owners, GMs, whoever's feeding you info, they're not just doing it because they like you. They're doing it because there's an agenda or motive behind it that benefits somebody involved. It's like whenever these agents are getting their prospects' names out there of workouts for teams who don't release that info, they're doing it to benefit themselves. They're doing it to leverage something. There's a reason why. It's not just because, oh, I like this guy, I got a good relationship with him, let's just feed him this information. So now sometimes, of course, if you do something big for them, they'll scratch your back on something else. But nonetheless, usually 9 times out of 10, sourced info comes with an agenda behind it, and you've got to figure out what that agenda is when it's put out there. And you're right, the Thunder just typically do not leak stuff like that. Not to say that they never leak anything, because I feel like if you're in the camp of the Thunder don't leak things, people are always going to throw back at you Pokashevsky. And if you want to believe that the Thunder don't leak things, you can just throw back at them James Bouknight. So it's just an endless cycle of these couple of times we found out things or didn't find out things about OKC. But yeah, I think that if I had to bet money, it's going to be one of the top 3 guys, and you can just calm down on the Jaden Ivey smokescreen. Although I think Jaden Ivey will be a very good player. But we're going to talk about the more interesting topic coming up after the break, talking about pick 12, because you have very strong opinions on who you think the Thunder should go after at pick 12, and I want to hear your reasoning coming up. But first, I want to say right now, we're good friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all betting needs and info, news and odds, including NBA Finals action, NHL hockey, and just everything in between. So make sure you go check them out today at BetOnline. Folks, BetOnline is going to have you covered with everything you want betting-wise on sports. It's so easy. You type in BetOnline in your URL, you go to sports, and then from there you can go down to basketball, and then NBA, and then you're going to see the NBA series odds, which right now, after the Warriors took the game in Boston and even up the series again, they're now back to being the favorites at minus 135. So you can check that out today at BetOnline. We are back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you for making Locked On Thunder your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. Dylan, let's talk about pick 12. You've been very high on pick 12. And for me, my stance has been you're going to have value at the 12th overall pick. Mm-hmm. I've been saying this since the lottery. You don't just have to be desperate to find a trade up to 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, especially in this draft class. In this draft class, the guys I have graded at pick 7 through 12 are separated by the thinnest of margins, that they're not truly even separated. It's just because you have to pick somebody for each slot on the big board. So you're going to have good talent fall to you at 12, especially if we have a draft night surprise, which we typically always have a draft night surprise. So this is just, if it goes chalk, you're going to have a good name there. Whenever you see the rise of Jiang, whenever you see the rise of Sohan, Branham, these guys rising up the leaderboards, it's going to have to push somebody down the leaderboards come draft night. So at 12, are you team trade up no matter what, or would you just stay put at 12?
I'm open to either one, but honestly, I mean, just kind of like you said, I'm chill with just staying at 12 because, I think there's a lot of value, not even just at the 12th spot. I think there's a lot of value in this draft. I think it's a very underrated draft class, honestly, the more you dig into it. But, I have, I guess a campaign, like I'm pushing propaganda on Twitter for a certain prospect, and I'm sure that's who you're talking about. But I want to be clear, like you said, there's going to be some players that potentially fall down there. And I'm not saying I'm pushing for that player over, a Johnny Davis if he fell, an AJ Griffin Jr., Shaedon Sharpe, who, after talking to a few scouts, some of them are like, there's probably a team that's going to fall in love with his upside, and he's not going to fall past 8. And then there's other guys that are like, well, he could legitimately be there at 12. And, I mean, if he's there at 12, regardless how you feel about the guy, I think you have to take that kind of swing. So, I mean, just because I'm pushing for a guy that, is kind of at the late lottery, doesn't mean that's 100% who I want. I'm just kind of campaigning for him. But no, I would love to see Johnny Davis on this team. I think that he gives you a lot in terms of shot creation, but also his defense and his motor, I think, is some of the best in the class at his position. AJ Griffin Jr., obviously, his shooting. I liked hearing what he said at his Portland workout, how all the naysayers are saying that he can't play defense and he wants to prove them wrong. I love that mentality, I love that mindset, and I want to see it. If he gets back to how he was playing, before he came to Duke, before his injuries in his high school career, that's an absolute steal. And if he falls to 12, I mean, you sprint to the podium. And, there's obviously Sharp with the upside. Yeah, I mean, those are the guys. Benedict Mathurin, like, I don't think there's any shot he falls. Like, if he gets all the way down to 11, I don't think he falls past the Knicks. I just feel like he's tailor-made for New York. Like, it's like the Hollywood East, and I feel like Benedict Mathurin could be, like, not a Hollywood player in terms of, like, his off-the-court stuff, but, like, on the court, like, he's just highlight. Like, he's a human highlight reel. Like, not Dominique Wilkins' human highlight reel, but, he's the guy that's going to go out there and just bring you exciting basketball. And I think that, New York would really, like, love that and embrace a player like that. So I don't see him falling past 11, but if he came to 12 too, I would snatch that. Just any of those wing players really that fall to 12, I'm more than happy snatching.
Well, you have your guy at 12, though, Ousmane Dieng, who you've been just pounding the table for.
Dieng game, baby.
We're going to get into his player profile soon here on Locked On Thunder, but to tease it, tell me what you think. Why are you so high on Ousmane Dieng for the Thunder?
Yeah, see, a lot of the thing with Ousmane Dieng, like, I'm very high on the upside. I'm very high on the defensive potential, and I'm very high on the guy that, me and Alex talked about it in a couple podcasts ago. A player that really struggles early on in the year and has a dramatic improvement in the second half. And you look at guys, I mean, it happens at every level. I mean, you've got Malachi Branham at Ohio State. It took him like 10 games to get going, and then he was going off like gangbusters. Dyson Daniels, Jaden Hardy, they obviously had to adjust to the physicality and the speed of playing against professional guys. And once they got more comfortable, they really hit the ground running. And Ousmane Dieng, like, you ask any scout, the first half of the year, this guy, I think Sam Vecini said that, like, there's no statistical evidence this guy's an NBA prospect. And second half of the year, he started showing some things. He showed, why he's being considered in the lottery. So, like, the upside is the thing that, like, really intrigues me with him. But the reason that I think, like, he's one for the Thunder is I think that he might be the most the most prototype Presti pick of all time. And I'm working on writing a piece for this on the weekend, but, like, this is just kind of like my bullet points. I think he's an infusion of the new age, old age Thunder because he's not a super athlete, but, he can get off the ground. He can, go dunk it. So he's a long, athletic defense type. That's the old age Thunder. New age, he's a guy that can dribble. He can pass. He can shoot. He can create for his own shot. He can create for his teammates. Like, new age Thunder on that point. He's a young guy with upside. He's got the NBL pipeline. You go back to Josh Giddey last year, Terrence Ferguson before that. He's got the French pipeline, Teo Maladone, Jalen Horde, Olivier Sarr. Olivier Sarr, I mean, it's just like.
Stop remembering the Olivier Sarr times, too. Those Olivier Sarr times really choke me up as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, don't even get me started on Olivier Sarr. But, no, I mean, just all the dots, like, just connecting the dots. It feels like it's written in the stars that, like I said, I would rather, take the guy that falls to 12, but I can 100% see and justify Presti reaching at 12.
Coming up, let's talk picks 30, 34, and should the Thunder add some veteran help to this rebuilding roster? We are back on the Locked On Thunder Podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles. Thank you for making Locked On Thunder your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. This is our NBA Draft Dash pod. We're going to go every single day, including the weekends, through the draft. And, of course, we're always Monday through Friday here on the Locked On Podcast Network, joined today by Thunder Chats, host of the Topic Thunder podcast. Chats, 30, 34. What is your feeling telling you? Who are some names that you like so far? We've heard a lot of names down in that range that have worked out for OKC, specifically Keon Ellis, who not only had 2 workouts in OKC, but I heard that he absolutely crushed his workouts in OKC both times. So it feels like maybe they're going to try to get Keon Ellis at 30, 34. Kind of who do you like in that range?
Yeah, I mean, I like Ellis. anybody that is a wing and that can shoot, and again, going back to the age and the upside, I like those types of players. But kind of falling in the same vein, Max Christie is a guy that I've really become enamored with in the draft process. It's funny, everybody talked about how Caleb Houston withdrew from the combine. It's like, oh, he's got to have a promise. The Thunder love getting promises. It's definitely the Thunder and Caleb Houston. And it's just like, Max Christie did the same thing, but nobody's wanting to link Max Christie and the Thunder. It's just Caleb Houston. And I think Max Christie fits better with what OKC is trying to do. He's like a 6'5", 6'6" wing. He's got long arms. He really gets after it defensively. Like, he's really good at on-ball defense. Off-ball defense, there's a little bit to be desired, and he didn't have a great year in terms of shooting the ball at Michigan State, but just the proof is in the tape. Like, his shot's not broken. His form looks like pristine. And from everything that I've heard, he's torched every workout that he's been in. So he's definitely a guy that I like, and also it kind of falls back into, he was a guy that was highly touted going into this draft, and, he kind of slipped. So anytime you can take a swing on a prospect like that, like 30, 34 range, I'm always all for it. And another guy that I really like is Gabriel Procida out of Italy. He's a little bit older. I think he's like 21, if I'm not mistaken. But, he's also a wing. He can really shoot the ball, super athletic. People on our show have said he might be the bounciest swing in the draft, which is kind of crazy, like pound for pound bounciest swing in the draft. Gets after it defensively. He's got the dog mentality. And the beauty with Procida is he gives you flexibility that you don't have with other prospects, because you can bring him in right away if, you feel like that's what you need to do. You can bring him to the G League if you want to oversee his development, or you can draft and stash him and let him continue to develop in the Euro League. And so that's I really like Procida for all those reasons. If you haven't noticed, like, there's a theme in all the prospects I like. I just want to surround Shea with shooting. And Shea and Giddey with shooting. And how I said on the podcast, I want shooting on the wings. I want shooting on the bigs. I want the coach to be able to shoot. I want the refs to be able to shoot. Front office to be able to shoot. Like, just surround those dudes with shooting.
I agree. They need to fill that shooting hole. The Thunder do, especially whenever you have two great playmakers in Shea, in Giddey, who can set them up, and they can benefit from the drive and kick from Shea and benefit from the passing and kind of vision of Josh Giddey. Let's talk trades, because the Box and One put out a report that they're hearing that the Thunder are going to trade pick 30 and 34 for veteran help. To me, that sounds like a big, because they have a lot of perimeter guys that they like and want to get minutes to and touches to, and you don't really want to throw another veteran in that mix. Down low, is there anyone that sticks out to you who could be valued with pick 30 and 34?
Yeah, veteran big, yeah, that derailed what I was about to say, so I'm gonna throw that out.
I wonder if the report just meant like has played in the NBA before, like as a veteran.
Yeah, it's possible. A guy that I don't know how available he is at this juncture, but the Nuggets are like I would say even like a likely trade partner, because they have picked 21 obviously, but they also probably are looking to shed a little bit of money going into this offseason. And JaMychal Green's kind of been a player that people have thrown about to, kind of get money off of that contract. I wonder if you could trade 30 and 34 for JaMychal Green, absorb his contract, before the new league year starts, and bring in a guy like Zeke Nnaji, who I think has a lot of potential still as a prospect. He's young, but he's playing behind Jokic. I think he has a lot of talent. I think he could do a lot. I think it was Derek Murray that was on your podcast that was talking about like just how great of a kid that Zeke Nnaji was. And, we know that Presti values people first over players. So I feel like he feels like a Thunder guy. And now to say how he would fit next to Chet or Jabari, because he's also a little thin himself, that's another question, but I do feel like he is a guy that I'd be down to check out.
Yeah, Zeke is a guy that Derek was raving about on the pod on Monday, so you can go back and listen to that. JaMychal Green, $8.2 million, a player option that he's probably going to exercise for the 2022-23 season, and then he's an unrestricted free agent in 2023, which allows the Thunder to stay flexible monetarily as they want to do in 2023. I think that's a nice target. I just wonder what that report could mean, what that trade would even look like, and what that would kind of signal for the Thunder. But Chats, thanks for joining us. You got your Twitter account at Thunder Chats. You got Topic Thunder. Where all can they find you and support your work?
Yeah, man. So like you said, follow me at Thunder Chats. That's my main. Follow our podcast at OKC Topic Thunder. We're posting 2 times a week. I said we're knee deep in draft coverage for like the past few weeks, but like we're waist deep, if not chest deep, in draft coverage at this point. So we have new guests coming on, every week. This Saturday we're doing a mock draft wars with the No Ceilings guys, and next week we're actually having yourself, Brandon Raybar, and Andrew Schlecht to come on and kind of have a Thunder roundtable. We had it last year. Everybody really loved it. It was a great time. So really look forward to that. And then also you can read my work at boomtownshoops.com. And yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. Like I've said before, ever since you took the reins of Locked on Thunder, you've really breathed new life into it, and you're killing it, man. So keep it up.
I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.